Welcome back to Chez Garbage, folks, and I hope you're ready for a hell of a trash roast, because this might well be the hottest summer on record, and I'm not just talking about the apocalyptically horrifying weather. Tonight's menu features extra spicy rom-com and fan service options for folks of many tastes, including girl, plus corny wish fulfillment for horny old men, a revenge fantasy so edgy it makes Shield Hero look well-adjusted, and a big dumb death game so big and so dumb it might even surpass King's Game. It's a veritable feast of festering trash, a real rubbish buffet, a proper smorgarbage board. And, as always, we've rated every option on our incredibly intuitive, proprietary trash scale to help you decide what to stuff down your gullet first. Just remember, if you need to know how the trash rating system works, they will never find your body. This is the hottest trash of summer 2024, sponsored by Rosetta Stone, the pioneering immersive language acquisition app that lets you learn Japanese or 24 other languages on your own time, no matter how busy you might be. With bite-sized lesson plans easily accessible from your phone or PC, you can keep studying when and wherever you have time. I've been using it every day since we got back to Canada to keep myself fresh for our return to Japan, sneaking in lessons between writing and recording sessions in this very office, and more than once, on the can. And thanks to Rosetta Stone's automated pronunciation engine, I get to keep that between me, the app, and my toilet, and the tens of thousands of people watching this video now, while still getting helpful feedback on how I'm saying stuff. It also helps that their audio tracks are recorded by real native speakers, and they even have learner-friendly stories to practice reading aloud, which really help pass the time when I'm fighting for my life on the porcelain throne. Once again, Rosetta Stone has a great deal to offer exclusively for Mother's Basement viewers. All you gotta do is click the link in the doobly-doo, and you can get over 60% off their lifetime plan, not just for one language, but all 25. So you can start your journey to Japanese fluency today and keep learning wherever your travels take you next. Speaking of bite-sized stuff, every item on tonight's menu comes with an optional side of Plus Size Elf, an anime about a world that's got portals to other worlds and sometimes elf girls, plus other types of girl come through those, and then they get addicted to processed foods because they don't have those in fantasy worlds. But then the portal uses a weight sensor, so they gotta work that off to go back, or to use magic without their magic thong that they need to use magic snapping on their badonkadonks, which is obviously a problem because you can't do magic without your magic thong. Also, there's this massage therapy nutritionist type guy who helps them lose that weight and sees them naked a lot because their clothes are made of tissue paper. It's one of those anime. But, you know, for chubby chasers, who frankly are one of the most underserved kinds of pervert in the entire anime community, so more power to them, I say. Aside from some surprisingly good health and wellness tips every episode, that really is all this anime has to offer. It's basically empty calories, but that's exactly what you want from a basket of French fries at the end of the day. Sure, maybe those fries are a wee bit misshapen sometimes due to the guys making them barely having time to sleep between all-day shifts at their sub-minimum wage job, but they get the job done, and you don't gotta buy the Blu-ray to see their nipples. By the way, in those last few sentences, French fries was a clever euphemism for big fat anime titties. I give Plus Size Elf 3 novelty trash can shaped bread baskets. If that's too spicy a side for your palate, we also offer Pseudo Harem as a substitute, which isn't a short anime, but it may as well be for how much plot there actually is in it. It's also not particularly trashy, just a cute little comedy about theater kids flirting via anime tropes, but you're the one who wanted a blander side dish. Don't blame me. One bread basket. If you're looking for something in a more medium heat range, 2.5D Seduction might be just the thing. Remember how my dress-up darling surprised everyone by not being a bog-standard harem thing about a stereotypical otaku loser surrounded by insanely hot, mostly naked amateur models for some reason? Well, you can finally forget what they took from us, because this is that bog standard harem thing. Anime Club Senpai Masamune is a hardcore otaku who's sworn off treacherous 3D women for the 2D purity of Liliel, the scantily clad angel from his favorite childhood battle anime he was way too young for, who's ever loyal to its protagonist, Ashford. Meanwhile, love interest Kohai Lilisa wants to be Liliel and is quite impressed with his cast-off figure collection because they make such great costume references. Also, if he wouldn't mind too much, she'd very much like it if he'd take some sexy pictures of her, please. All of which puts his long-term life plan to die a virgin for his waifu in serious jeopardy. Though not that serious, since they're both dense enough to have their own event horizons.
私、最近先輩といると変な気持ちを感じてて、この気持ちが何なのかずっと考えてて、今日やっと分かったんです。コスプレのパートナーとして先輩が大好きです。
コスプレのパートナーとして、なるほど、理解した。
But further complicating matters and filling out the harem is this other childhood Kohai he used to play Ashford and Liliel with on the playground way back in the day, before she moved away after realizing that he only had eyes for his waifu, even though she started doing her hair like that waifu. So obviously, since that wasn't enough to get his attention, she decided to become a famous model entirely so Senpai would notice her, and now she's back at the school to see if that worked. It didn't, but they both think she'd be great as the succubus side chick from the anime, so long story short, they end up faking orgasms together on the clubroom floor. Though, tragically, they cannot share the resulting pictures anywhere because that would go against her contract. You know, her modeling contract that she has entirely because she's obsessed with this one guy who she can't stop thinking about how he ignored her for anime. That is seriously her backstory. Also, their sexy teacher is a secret cosplayer, though she does not seem to be interested in Protag-kun in any way, which is an important distinction. We will get to why that is an important distinction when we're talking about another anime this season. And credit where it's due, speaking as a cosplay boyfriend, this show does get a lot of the little details about the hobby and its culture right. And it's got some very solid women supporting women vibes, which we love to see. But let's not split hairs here. This is pure male wish fulfillment harem anime nonsense, which we also love to see, even if it is a little toned down from the manga. 2.5D Seduction gets 3 flaming dumpsters full of sexy cosplay outfits and props. Now, ladies, worry not. The anime industry's cooked up something just as shallow and shamelessly wish-fulfilling for you to enjoy in true beauty. Yet another Crunchyroll-funded webtoon adaptation that they're not calling Crunchyroll Originals anymore because that brand is radioactive. Though unlike their last 2 unbranded webtoon things about bullied nobodies who become somebodies by learning to fight real good, this one's about a bullied nobody who becomes a somebody by learning to do makeup real good. Though she still does that with a YouTube tutorial, so it's not entirely unlike Viral Hit. Protag-chan even goes unwittingly viral to the point that random people she doesn't know are talking about her over burgers.
야, 너 얘 알아? 누구? 세범예고 미술반이라는데 졸라 이뻐. 이름이 임주경?
And speaking of not at all weird psycho behavior, she's also nominated behind her back for this face mash style hot girl ranking site that her new art school has for some reason, which is a big point of stress for her actually, not for any of the obvious reasons that would be stressful, but because it might expose her deep dark secret that she uses makeup to cover her. Is that acne? Freckles? Just general redness? She kind of just looks like a conventionally pretty actress trying to win an Oscar for being so brave, which is wild because this is animation, the one mass medium where ugly characters don't have to look like that. But everyone at her old school was tripping her and drawing clown faces on her for being so ugly. So I guess in the context of this fictional world where nobody understands how makeup works, she must actually be that ugly and need to hide it. But, oh no, this hot boy who likes the same metal bands and horror books as her saw her without makeup, and he's a little bit of a jerk. Whatever will she do? Basically, this shows Hannah Montana if instead of singing, her big secret is she's not like other girls. Or, for the cultured among you, it's Kare Kano if Yukino didn't actually have any flaws and was only worried about people finding out she's kind of frumpy sometimes. Animated in the style of Totally Spies for some reason. It's exactly the kind of ludicrously contrived, lowest common denominator pandering bullshit that sells like hotcakes, because a lot of chicks are just as lonely and sad as the dudes self-inserting themselves into solo leveling. Though, I will say, girls, if you're looking for comfort garbage, last season's Vampire Dormitory was way more fun. True Beauty's definitely sweet, but so much that it's liable to make anyone over 18 puke. I give it 2 rusty old dumpsters decked out in flowers and frilly pink shit and filled to the brim with Stanley cups. As in the TikTok popular collectible cup brand Stanley, not the famous hockey trophy. I feel like that's an important distinction to make because the next item on our menu, the Osan Newbie Adventurer, is explicitly made for sad men in their 30s and 40s who will have no idea what those cups even are. Though their girlfriends might.
そのくらいの年の差、大丈夫だよ。私の奥さんも20歳年下だし。
Finally, a fantasy anime for Leonardo DiCaprio. A fantasy anime that dares to say, hey, remember all them hot-blooded, big-muscled fighting anime you grew up on? We got their theme song guy, and he's twice as old as you are. Boy, you can really hear the 7 years since Kushida did the Dragon Ball Super theme. You know, I feel kind of mean ragging on all the old man stuff. Feels like bullying your grandpa for going to see the Rolling Stones in concert.
I love the young people.
But it really is the show's only distinguishing features. Story-wise, it's about an unfulfilled guy who quits his job to go work out a bunch, then comes back strong enough to kill monsters in a single punch, although his ranking at the local monster punching trade union does not reflect that skill, and so people are constantly underestimating him, especially rival monster punchers who think they're hot shit. Do I need to spell this out for you? It's Fantasy One Punch Man with an age gap. You think that's a gotcha? Bud, the sassy lost child is older than Saitama. And look, normally, I'd be 100% on board for some Fantasy One Punch Man nonsense. I have been known to enjoy such things quite a lot, but the real trouble for Osan Adventurer is it's airing alongside I Parry Everything, which is pretty much the exact same show, only better in every conceivable way. Like animation, obviously, but also writing. Instead of a simpering waifu sidekick, I Parry Everything pairs its protag Norup with a proper gender-flipped Genos, this literal princess who is so convinced of his absolute combat genius that she takes everything this sheltered backwoods idiot who's literally never seen a monster before in his life says at face value, in turn perpetuating his misconceptions that that's what a regular goblin looks like, this is just a cow, and he's still just a regular, unremarkable dude who's kind of in a little over his head. All of which makes the joke that he doesn't know how insanely overpowered he is infinitely funnier than how Osan tells it. In Osan, Rick'll just pulled the most insane feat of strength and speed that anyone has ever seen to absolutely stunt on the hands-down strongest other guy in the room, and then he's just like, wow, my opponent sure was going easy on me based on absolutely nothing, despite the fact that he's got this sexy 20-year-old dark elf maid chick who happens to be one of the strongest people on the planet, by the way, clinging to his arm and telling him what a tough guy hunk he is constantly, And his old job for the last decade was filing paperwork for the official Adventurer Ranking Bureau. I simply do not buy this joke's premise at all for 1 second, and I'm so glad they drop it after the first arc, because frankly, it felt like the show was gaslighting me. It does get a bit better after we meet the rest of the crazy characters in Rick's party and get into their lifelong quest to collect a bunch of MacGuffins and beat up a really big monster. But compared to the geopolitical shenanigans that I Parry Everything's gotten up to by its second arc, it's still no contest which one's worth watching. Though it's also no contest which one's trashier. I Parry Everything barely even does fan service, and there's not a stat screen in sight, so the best I can give it is one golden firework dumpster. Osan Adventurer, on the other hand, gets 3 record store bargain bins full of dad rock albums. But even Osan's preferable to the other kind of underestimated, overpowered adventurer story. You know, edgelord Garbo, like Berserk of Gluttony, about kids who get bullied super hard for not having good abilities, but then they discover their abilities are good actually, and use them to make them pay. Make them all pay. Which we got an isekai one of this season in Failure Frame. I became the strongest and annihilated everything with low-level spells, and it might just be the edgiest isekai trash ever made. I know that's a bold statement, what with all the slave-owning shield heroes and hentai goblins in this genre, but this thing is basically a more trenchcoat mafia-pilled take on Ari Ferretta, and that show's edgy protagonist literally pulls magic guns out of his trenchcoat. In contrast to Shield Hero's relatively cheerful first episode, which devotes only 25% of its runtime to Princess Bitch betrayal, Failure Frame's pilot is literally just a 20-minute long itemized list of Toka Mimori's 13 reasons. We cut from a flashback of his abusive stepdad abusing him to his present-day classmates bullying him for standing up for this girl who didn't want to be hit on a bus ride. Then, after they all get isekai'd, all his bullies and the popular kids get all the high-rank gotcha skills while he's stuck at E rank with abilities so trashy that the slutty gotcha goddess decides to just throw him in the literal magic garbage.
その転移魔法陣で最低ランクの勇者をとある遺跡へ転送します。名は通称廃棄遺跡。
But that gets announced like halfway through the episode, so at least there's a little bit of time to balance all that crap out with some action, right? Wrong. Because before he can go to that death dungeon to do cool anime stuff, all his most popular and OP classmates have got to line up one by one to tell him that they hate him, and his pleading for his life is totally just killing the vibe, and he should really just read the room and die already. Also, this unpopular little emo bitch who he used to be nice to stabs him in the back the second he gets a drop of S-rank social capital. And while that one girl he'd tell not to come to school tomorrow does, of course, stand up for him, she just gets knocked the f*** out for her trouble. And what's our reward for sitting through that episode-long Born to Die World is a f*** manifesto? Some actually kind of cool CGI monster designs, if I'm being honest. Grotesque, gangly proportions, generally very creative interpretations of classic concepts like the Minotaur. Though let me tell you right now, those qualities are more than offset by the CGI models of the human characters, which they use a lot. And those monster designs are completely wasted by the show's high concept anyway, since the low-level spells that his E-rank skill inflicts are, in fact, guaranteed hit status effects, which is insane because all of those have really low hit percentages otherwise, meaning he can instantly poison and paralyze anything just by pointing at it. It's a Death Note with extra steps, and the extra steps are torture. So instead of fight scenes, we have a series of big air quotes dramatic confrontations in which the hero instantly wins in one move, maybe two if he's feeling spicy and puts on an act to lower their guard first, then spends the next 5 to 10 minutes gloating while his foe agonizingly and slowly dies with no hope of escape while turning just the stupidest shade of Barney purple.
お前らみたいなのを駆除すると不思議と気分がいい。これが意外と悪くない。
Don't you worry though, Failure Frame makes sure you know they all super duper deserve it, and not just his classmates. By an astounding coincidence, 11 out of the 12 fantasy thugs he's murdered so far across 4 separate episodes were all distracted by debates about how much they should his elf waifu before they murder her, right before he murdered them. And the 12th one was about to do it. This clown show makes SAO's rogues gallery look rich, complex, and varied. Of course, at the end of the day, they're all just fucking blood bags for him to pop on the way to murdering his first actual classmate, right? We shouldn't expect guys with screen time measured in minutes or seconds to be much more complex than the thugs he fooled by begging for his life, or the rival type dude he promised he'd get stronger and fight later, but then he just stabbed him in the back the second he turned it. But outside of those archetypes, they could at least be different kinds of scumbag, right? Like, surely there's gotta be at least one cannibal out there, or a real estate speculator? I mean, P Vibes are also the B-rank classmate he's definitely gonna murder first's whole thing, and this other lesbian classmate who makes one of the nice girl classmates murder monsters even though she really doesn't want to, is also molesting her on the side. Hell, even the king who put a bounty on the elf waifu's head only did it because if I can't have her, no one will. It is literally rapists all the way down. Like the author wanted tips from Dan Harmon's story circle, but accidentally found that one deeply unfunny pyramid head meme instead. At least the gotcha goddess is kinda entertaining. No, scratch that. She is profoundly entertaining. Like if Aqua was the villain of Konosuba on purpose instead of by accident.
要するにあなたのスキルは外れ枠に当たるスキルなのです。しかも E 級だからだと思いますが、ステータスも低すぎです。レベルが上がっても数値の伸びは期待できないでしょう。もういいですか?
But after the intro's done, she barely gets a couple minutes of B-plot an episode to transparently gaslight, gatekeep, and girl boss the f*** out of the entire class, which is some sumptuously campy villain nonsense, don't get me wrong. There's just so little of it next to this massive heap of samey dog shit. I give Failure Frame 5 trash cans full of blood and razors. You kinda need a palate cleanser after a heap of garbage that pungent, and a shower. Luckily, Cafe Terrace and its goddesses is back to serve up another spicy season of classic harem comfort food. We're now out of the awkward early phase where all the girls treat their live-in love interest like something unpleasant they tracked in off the street and start catching actual feelings, which is really the make or break point for this sort of harem, and in a refreshingly straightforward move to keep the story moving, the show has opted to just have them all openly declare their crushes to each other at a little house meeting that they have. Except the tsundere, of course, because she's the tsundere. Also, the one who does all the Street Fighter references and comic relief may actually have the mind of a child, so no one's sure whether to count hers. But at this point, it's all a matter of tropey formalities before this thing congeals into a proper competitive polycule. Well, tropes, and the tsundere's gotta realize she's more of a tsune sadist. Not to be confused with a sado dere. That's when a girl acts like a sadist when she's not being all dere to protag-san. Oka's default mode is still very much tsune. Sadism's how she shows her affection.
早くどけよ、岡。
隼人君です。
お前な。
いいわね、その顔はゾクゾクする。ブヒって言いなさい。ブヒって。
With the will they won't they's resolving into who will firsts and the titular cafe's business booming though, the show does kind of need a new conflict to keep things interesting. And the one that it's cooked up is just, I mean, so There's an evil harem now. This corporate-ass cafe opens up down the road run by this old real estate asshole who hates Hayato's granddad and wants to tear down his house and business out of spite. So, in order to undermine Familia's reputation, this new cafe, Family, has hired 5 waitresses who look exactly like the goddesses and has them doing just the most insulting impressions of them, while also wearing much sluttier McDonald's versions of their iconic handmade uniforms. And of course, all those girls are eventually going to fall for Hayato too, and just make that whole side of things crazier. But for the moment, these waifus are out for blood. Business blood. And I'm honestly impressed with how unfucking hinged this show has managed to get without any sci-fi or fantasy elements, just a story about a Tokyo University student running a small business so the hot girls who were squatting in his grandpa's house don't become homeless. It's truly carrying on the spirit of that mid-2000s anything goes harem wave, which is why I'm upgrading Cafe Terrace's rating this season to 4 modest restaurant waste bins full of slightly stale yet once delicious breadsticks and half-eaten cake. Plus, someone lit a fire in the napkin dispenser. How's that? Palate's cleansed enough? No. Still got some edge in there. Luckily, we've got sweet and spicy menu items for days this season. Alia Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian is an exquisitely crafted piece of rom-com trash that deftly swerves around countless will they won't they cliches by simply having its titular girl tell the nerd she likes that she likes him up front. In Russian, because she's half Russian and thinks that he as a cute Japanese boy won't understand what she's saying. But what she doesn't know is he had a half-Russian childhood friend and thus speaks the language fluently. So for once, the shoe is on the other foot. Or it ends up there at least, after a suspiciously long and well-animated stocking putting on scene. Alia doesn't suspect his secret though, because he has a fake childhood friend covering for the real one who happens to be on the student council with her and also happens to be his secret sorta estranged sister who pretends to be his childhood's friend at school because, look, their relationship's complicated.
Good morning, my brother.
たった今お前のせいでグッドじゃなくなったわ。
なんで？反応しちゃうから。
死ね。
But then, Masachika is a complicated man, a beacon of genuine charisma amid a sea of wet blankets. It completely makes sense that the cool beauty from Russia would have a thing for him, not to mention his sister, and that he'd have a certain sort of effect on many other types of girl too.
はい。素晴らしい気迫に思わず子宮が震えました。
We have quite a few spicy items on tonight's menu, some quite a bit spicier than this, but of all those bold flavors, this one might just be my favorite. It's complex, mature, with many different intermingling notes. Every character has a distinctive, entertaining voice, and the plot moves at a surprisingly brisk pace with genuinely surprising twists, elevating what are fundamentally the lowest possible stakes with confident, witty presentation. If you enjoyed Kaguya-sama Love is War, this show hits a lot of similar notes, only with way more panty shots, which you won't hear me complaining about. It's also got some shades of Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. It's just a ton of fun all around. I give it 5 solid gold dumpsters full of fireworks. Okay, that's a normal amount of blood. I think we're ready for another potential edge fest. Why Does Nobody Remember Me in This World is basically that most classic of Christmas movies, It's a Wonderful Life, only this timeline doesn't hinge on the protagonist's existence, barring any extremely obvious plot twists. Instead, there was this big war 30 years ago, see, where every race but one was ethnically cleansed from the entire planet in a mass holocaust where literally all of them were shoved into mass graves. And that's the good timeline. In the bad one, the genocide didn't work out, and now the humans who, to be clear, 100% would have done it, are living underground in fancy sci-fi bunkers that provide a reasonable, if uncomfortable, facsimile of surface life. Not dead, to be clear. I mean, some of them are off-screen, presumably, but not all of them, which, again, is canonically what these people would have done to every other race given the opportunity, and then they have a yearly anniversary celebration for it. But, you know, they look like us, and the other ones have, like, horns and fur, so we're supposed to feel bad for the humans that they didn't get to do the genocide anymore, and want the protagonist to bring things back to how they were? Look, even without the moral considerations, I'd keep the timeline as is just to make sure I never have to see this animation again. No! Childhood friend Sean, not the liquefy filter! To be fair, the plot is shaping up to be a bit more complex than I'm letting on. The Prophet Sid, humanity's legendary hero from the good timeline, who nobody knows what he looked like in the old timeline because they never took his photo, and somehow Protag-kun has his magic sword now. I wonder if that's going to be a plot point later. Anyway, Sid may have slightly overstated the finality of his solution vis-a-vis the other races. Seems like he and some of their other heroes were secretly working together to stop whatever robot snake lady timeline f***ery is happening now. So it may have actually been some sort of 8D chess fake genocide gambit or something. I don't know. I have not read ahead in the light novels, and I'm not going to. But that doesn't change the fact that Protag-kun thinks he did it and looks up to him for doing it, and his entire motivation is, God damn, bro, things were so much better back when we won the race war. Doesn't even seem particularly driven to unliquefy filter his childhood friend anymore, since he's got this new angel main squeeze who somehow manages to look more generic than the literal parody of a generic angel waifu from 2.5D Seduction.
Please set me free from these chains.
So generic, I kind of want to give the show the benefit of the doubt on all that other stuff. I mean, Kei Suzane does come out with a new fantasy light novel series on average every 2 years. That is not a lot of time to think about world building. It is entirely possible he was just mindlessly mashing together fantasy tropes and put literally zero thought into the ethical implications of a global race war outside that context. Likely, even, given how the last anime with his name on it turned out. So I'm hedging my edge bets and giving this one 2 trash cans full of tomato sauce and safety scissors. I don't want to leave you hanging on all that edge I promised, though, so let's see if we can find it elsewhere, like in this show with a scary skeleton man on the cover. That's gotta be edgy, right? The strongest magician in the Demon King's army is a human is about that guy from the title I just read, who, yes, I'm sorry to say, is CGI like 90% of the time, and yes, it always looks at least that bad from every angle. And there's so many other 3D models, and none of them are better. But in Ike's defense, he's got to keep that horribly rendered mask on so nobody figures out that he's not a demon, at least not until he finishes his quest to build a world where everyone can get along. A goal he starts toward by taking over a human city with his big demon army, then putting the demons in the city next to the people whose home they just sacked and partially destroyed, and saying, hey, get along. And then they do. It just works. The Strongest Magician sometimes threatens to become a kinda genuinely interesting anime about fantasy politics and civic planning and shit, but then it just keeps shoving all that to the background, while in the foreground, the annoying ditzy maid and the horny Gyaru succubus chase each other around the dinner table yelling, "He's mine! No! no, he's mine, back and forth, while the fat pig dude who only ever opens his mouth to glaze up the protag is like, Aiku-sama, your dick is so big. How are you so handsome and such a genius at the same time? Like they're in the local theater putting on a production of Overlord. And then, when he actually does get a chance to flex his tactical genius on screen by outwitting an opponent in an evenly matched war game, his brilliant solution is invent guns, which he doesn't even do himself. He just has the idea that guns might be useful, and then someone else makes them for him. As you can see, I was not exaggerating with my Pigman impression. The best thing I can say about this show is it finally made me get around to playing Tyranny, a half-finished Obsidian CRPG, the best kind of Obsidian CRPG, that actually explores all the cool ideas about managing a more equitable evil empire that Strongest Magician just sort of hints at, then leaves on the floor while it goes off to do more anime bullshit. I give it 2 wastebaskets full of Fantasy City zoning maps with obscene doodles just all over them. Dang, that wasn't very edgy either. We do have one more thing that might cut that itch, but I'm saving the best trash for last tonight, so let's explore more of our romance options first with Makein Too Many Losing Heroines. How'd that get in the trash pile? I mean, I guess meta-commentary on anime rom-com tropes is a little bit trashy conceptually, but all them cinematic angles are clearly art. Whoa! Whoa! Okay, madam, this is a YouTube video. You cannot... Sir, could you please stop her... Oof. I thought Dan Da Dan was supposed to be next season.
じゃあ済んだ頃にまた。
And that's not even the most out-of-pocket teacher at this school.
私しばらく外してるから、この部屋を使っていいわよ。中から鍵がかかるし、ごゆっくり。
No, like, that's still not even the half of it. She is straight up committing crimes.
放課後自習室に行こうと思いまして、一緒に行きませんか？
自習室にも一つ仕掛けるべきかしら。
I recommended Makein on the ones to watch for its remarkably fleshed out characters and razor-sharp dialogue, and I'm recommending it here because the characters spouting that dialogue are remarkably fleshed out trash. Sometimes non-childhood friend-type homewrecker trash, sometimes otaku trash.
一応3年くらい前からナローに連載してるんだけど、これ知ってるっていうか読んでます。
まずは三島が滑腹自殺して異世界転生するの。太宰はそれを追って玉川上水で受水する。ただ18禁だから君たちには見せられない。
What's real crazy is she almost described an actual anime there. Although Mishima isn't in the Osamu Dazai Isekai No Longer Allowed in Another World, and it's only rated 14A for excessive elf titty. I'm honestly not even sure if I can call that one trash, since it's a surprisingly literary deconstruction of the isekai genre for a comedy that hinges on the Japanese equivalent of Kurt Cobain jokes. Or maybe not surprisingly, given the choice of Protag, who's a famous author if you're not familiar with the Japanese literary canon and/or Bungo Stray Dogs. But then I'm kinda in the same boat with Makein, and my philosophy is any animator who puts that much effort into tummy shading knows exactly what they're making, so I'm happy to award Too Many Losing Heroines 5 golden dumpsters full of fireworks. And the Dazai Isekai does have a big tentacle monster in episode 1, so I guess that knows what it is too. It only gets 3 golden dumpsters though. Animation could have been better. Sometimes, though, you don't want a clever subversion of rom-com trash. You just want to guzzle that shit straight and unfiltered. And for those times, we have Love is Indivisible by Twins. The story of these two smoking hot twins who could not be more different except for one key detail. Naori's a bratty gyaru otaku with few friends who can match her razor-sharp wit. Rumi's a popular go-getting Genki tomboy athlete, but they're both head over heels for the same boy next door, Jun, and now that puberty's kicked in, boy howdy, are they both ever ready to f*** Jun up emotionally. So Rumi asks him out first because, you know, go-getting, and they have a really happy, healthy, productive relationship for a solid minute there, but this is anime, so of course that ain't gonna fly. Halfway through episode 1, she dumps him out of nowhere, pretty much the same way she asked him out actually, then orders him to date her sister because, as she later explains when her friend quite justifiably asks her, "What the f***, girl?" she's popular, so she can eventually find another good dude probably, but her sister, you know, with her personality and all, if she doesn't get together with Jun now, she's liable to die alone. How thoughtful. I would just love to have a sibling who thinks about me like that. Then she dumps him again at the end of the episode, only this time it's from her sister's perspective because this show thinks it's literature. And, you know, to be fair, the dialogue is pretty well written as these things go. Even the otaku talk, which is rare to see.
宇宙、そこは最後のフロンティア。
娘が公正日誌の出だしを暗唱する。
宇宙物だったらスター・ウォーズの方が面白いんだけど。
SF 設定からドラマを紡ぐか、騎士竜リタンを SF で語り直すかの違いは大きいな。
古典を語り直す。リブートするってジャンルを築いたっていうのは庵野監督の大きな功績だと思うよ。
原作への愛情、理解力、加えて作り手のネームバリューが並び立っていないと無理だからね。
すごくインセプションっぽい。これっていつの公開？
インセプションの4年前。
イメージを具現化するコンサトシの先進的感覚の絶対的勝利。
These aren't just cringy nerd references to spotlight things the author's a fan of. They actually tell us more about who these people are, what they value, their differing tastes and opinions, and the points they connect on. And more importantly, the ways they're not connecting. Naori and Jun spend so much time trading barbs and references, they're not really together in the moment a lot of the time, whereas he and Rumi have much more natural conversations. There's some genuinely good character writing here, just in service of some of the most aggravatingly inexplicable melodramatic bullshit I've ever watched. Also, it's not always, you know, good otaku meta commentary. They do get real Scream sequels with some of it.
あの頃のルミ、まさに恋する乙女だったよね。
Which really makes you appreciate just how good Makein is at this. But you know, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hooked on this crap anyways. I just gotta know how these stupid, horny teenagers are gonna hurt each other next. I give it 3 flaming dumpsters full of Jun's therapy bills. Speaking of stupid teens hurting each other, though, it's been a while since we last served up a good old-fashioned big dumb death game, and let me tell you, they don't get much bigger or dumber than Tasuketsu, Fate of the Majority. The first death game anime I've ever seen that ropes the entire population of Tokyo into the festivities. A game in which a yes or no question is posed on TV every night at midnight based on viewer submissions to a magic mailbox that moves randomly around the city every day, and then everyone with the majority answer dies immediately. Unfortunately, the deaths themselves, at least at the hands of the game, are a little underwhelming, especially compared to the genre's greats. But Tasuketsu still has its fair share of horrible animated violence, by which I, of course, mean violence that is animated just horribly.
あら、あなた、本当に運がないわね。
撃ったのはあんただろ。
Now, simple math tells us those rules will create a hard limit of 25 days before there's 1 or less people left alive in the city, which also quickly culls the massive player base down to a more manageable and traditional death game roster of 5 naive goobers united by the power of friendship plus several dozen unhinged psychopaths. Conveniently, there are also several dozen death game superpowers floating around the city, which come in two flavors. Rights, minor supernatural advantages that can be gained for free just by opening an envelope, and prime rights, straight up reality warping abilities that can only be attained by sacrificing a body part.
僕は陰謀を選んだ。
You laugh, but bro's out here playing 5D chess.
I'll kick you in the balls.
そうか、君が先か。
I have not seen an anime fly this far off the rails this fast since King's Game. It might even be worse. We've got endgame betrayals and third act plot twists dropping while players are still learning the rules. Over half the cast is dead by the end of episode 1. But don't worry, they get better, and the apparent big bad's opening gambit in the very first scene we meet him in is blowing up his own allies with a car bomb. You know, once all the episodes are out, I might just have to give this one a full dedicated roast of its own just to do it justice. Although, if there are any other anime from this or past trash menus that you'd like to see get that same treatment, let me know down below. If you're curious to watch it now, though, I'm giving Tasuketsu the same rating I gave to the legendary Kamikatsu, a freight train full of fireworks crashing into a septic tank. I feel a little bad leaving that one on stay tuned for future roasting, but at least I know I'm not leaving you folks hungry. I mean, I promised the hottest load of trash this restaurant has ever served, and I think I'm more than delivered. If you agree, there's like a button down there that you can click to let me know under the table in this restaurant. And when you're ready to leave, our valet will be around with a burlap sack to get you back where you came from. I'm Geoff Thew. I've been your waiter this evening. And don't worry about the bill. We've already robbed you.